Hello everyone and welcome to Ascent Level Prizes Conversations on Craft, where we dive into the messy and magical world of writing and demystify the publishing process. And I'm thrilled to have the most wonderful writer here today, Stacey Thomas, author of The Revels. Stacey Thomas graduated from a university in Massachusetts, Holyoke College, and she's an alumna of the Curtis Brown Creative Novel Writing course. Stacey, so wonderful to have you today.
No, very excited to be here. Thank you for asking me.
So we're going to start off today with our quick fire question round, which we do
Oh,
every time. So first of all, a book you wish you'd written.
oh God, probably Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clark.
Oh, that's a good one. Your favourite book to TV adaptation?
The Outcast by Sadie Jones.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's one of Rachel Neely's favourite books as well, because I read it after she recommended it to
Oh
me.
my God, yeah, I loved it.
The
Yeah.
So sad, so
Yeah.
sad. The weirdest book idea you've ever had?
Oh God, probably an idea like it's that thing. It was the book someone else had written. I woke up and I had this outline in my head, and then I realized, wait, this is the book that you read a few days ago, and but you loved it so much, so that's why. Yeah.
Love that. Are you pen or laptop?
Laptop, but I prefer pen, but like laptop because otherwise my hands would just fall off.
Oh. Are you pantser or planner?
Planner, but I can be a bit of both sometimes.
And finally, your favourite genre?
Historical fiction, no
Good
surprises.
answer. You have to say that. You
I
have to.
know, I know.
So we're going to start off today into diving into your process as a writer. So starting at the very beginning, Stacey, what happens when you first get that glimmer of a book idea?
Usually, what happens is like I write it down. Like usually, I don't really have the story, but like I have like a line. So it's that thing. So I have a sort of like I have like a sort of a first line or like a snapshot of a line. So I'm starting to get a sense of the character, who they are, and their attitude. And then as I'm kind of slowly trying to build that character, that's when I start to work on like the storyline and everything else and what the world is. For me, it's a case of like outlining the book. So it's that thing, so everything just starts to get a bit clearer in my head of like where I'm going.
So for the revels, did that start with a first line, or how did you
Oh,
come up
God.
with the idea for the revels?
So with the Revels, that kind of came out from like a book I had written that I couldn't get an agent for because it was just terrible. It was contemporary fantasy, but then I was inspired by like Jonathan Strange and Mr. Around, so like where you have the footnotes. And so in the footnotes I went heavily into the sort of the history of the witch trials. And then so when that book failed, I was like, oh actually I want to write about the witch trials. And so I spent a few months researching it, and then afterwards I was like, okay, I need to start writing it. And it's that thing, like, if this was a TV show, it's like, yeah, I'm going to start writing it. And then it's that thing. And 3 episodes later, it's like, yeah, I'm still trying to write this because I was working on the outline, but like, I couldn't find the voice for the characters. When you're trying to find an opening line, oh, if you have the characters in the sense of who they are, you should just be able to get going. But I feel like for me, I like to have an opening line because it just sets the tone of the story. And sometimes it's that thing, if you don't have the tone, it's sort of like a song. I just find it really hard to get going if I don't have that kind of sense of attitude to know exactly who the character is and what they sound like and how they walk through the world.
It's so hard to be in that stage because it feels like you're in the dark, doesn't it? It's so
Yeah,
hard to
yeah.
begin when there's so much unknown. When you start researching, how long do you spend on your research?
Oh God. I mean, for the Rebels, like it took months because like I was writing, I didn't have an agent or a publishing deal at the time. Even though I wanted to like write and I was kind of like trying to hold myself accountable, you can take more time because you're not kind of beholden to someone. And so it's a different feeling to when you're writing under contract. It's a different kind of pressure. But then with the Rebels, I probably only finished the first draft as quickly as I did because I was doing the Curtis Brown Creative Writing Group. And so sharing your work with other people, that kind of gave you your own deadline because, you wanted to write so you can actually have some new work to share with everyone.
Yeah. How long did that first draft take you, Stacey?
It probably took me about 8 to 9 months because I was writing on the Curtis Brown course. There were periods where I wouldn't write for a few weeks because I would get really great feedback, and then that would just force me to stop and go back and re-edit. I was developing my skills as I was going along, and when you're doing the course, I think for me the best part was not just getting feedback on my own work, but then seeing other people's stories and how they approach it. Like when they're just everyone was writing in different genres, and so seeing how they responded to the feedback, you can actually just learn a lot from like reading other people's stuff and how they put it together, and so that was quite helpful.
How often would you share your work in the Curtis Brown course? Is it like a weekly thing or monthly, or do you share big chunks?
We probably share like a chapter. There was word limit. I can't remember how much, but it was a good chunk. And so the course was 6 months. So every 3 or 4 weeks we'd share our work because it's that thing. I think there was like 12 to 15 of us in the group. So it would alternate. So each week we'd read and we critique three other people's work, and so we take them in turns. That was good because it's being as great as it would have been to have weekly feedback. I think getting the feedback and then having a few weeks to in your own time just work on it and respond to it, that was quite helpful because it gave you the space to, it's that thing, it's like, if you wanted to just really kind of reassess the whole draft as well.
Do you have advice for writers who aren't part of an organised um, support group like you gained in Curtis Brown, who just kind of get beta feedback or read it as a writing group? Do you have any advice for how people can make the most of that and when to listen and when not to listen?
Oh, whenever I get feedback, I make a list of what people were complimenting me on, so what I was doing well, and then what people were picking out as a problem. And if that was a recurring issue, then it's a case of having a think about, okay, this is what they're pointing out, and there seems to be a consensus. And it's a thing, and I think try not to get into the headspace of, oh, they're wrong and I'm right, and so I need to just keep going. I think have a serious think about it because at the end of the day, the hardest thing you can accept as a writer is that not everyone is going to like your book, and sometimes you could be doing something stylistically or with the characters that it's that thing for most people they will just not like. If you carefully consider the feedback and you're seeing like why people are not getting on, then you could ask yourself, is this the intention that I want to give, or it's that thing, do I want to, is this the impression that I want readers to have? Am I doing this for a reason? And just kind of challenging yourself as to why you're doing it, and if readers are responding, do I want them to feel like it and stuff like that. And if you're feeling defensive, then ask yourself why you're feeling like that, I guess. I think it's just that thing, just
That
trying to be kind, but then putting yourself in the headspace where you're listening and just trying to see like what it is about your writing that's causing that reaction, I guess. Because sometimes it could be that there's something that you need to look at, but then sometimes it could be that the person reading it just isn't the right reader for like what you're trying to write.
that's great advice.
Yeah.
In my writing group, I used to, when I first started, try and make everyone happy. And I
Yeah.
found I was destroying my writing because I was just
Yeah.
incorporating everything that people said to me. And then I thought, no, you can't please everyone, can you? It's so
I
hard.
know, because I'm in like a book group and like we read like a lot of like psychological thrillers, and like it's that thing that's not really a genre I read, and so when I'm reading it, like if I was beta reading someone's book, it's sort of just that thing. It's like I would be a terrible beta reader because like this isn't a genre that I'll usually gravitate to. I think like if someone, so when someone's reading my book and they're not like this isn't a genre they want to read, then I can't do anything that's going to change their mind. And I remember even when I sent my book out, like I queried an agent, and like it was the loveliest rejection where it was, I think, actually just said it was just too historical for her, I mean. And that's fine because I can't bring the book into the modern day. It just wouldn't work and I wouldn't want to. So like that's fine. Like I couldn't change anything about the book because it would just destroy the story. But then I feel like maybe sometimes with beta reading, sometimes it's like it's sort of hard to say actually this just didn't work for me because it's not something I want to read, because sometimes when you're giving feedback, it's that pressure to say something because you don't want to say, oh, actually, this just wasn't for me.
So, on your first draft, did you set yourself word limits, or what did the process of writing that first draft look like?
So I tried to set my because I was writing around having a full-time job, so it was difficult. But then I was also writing during COVID, so I didn't have any distractions. Like so I could pretty much make like writing my life like, while we were like in lockdown or like, slowly easing out the pandemic. So I would try to sort of set myself like a workout where I'm writing a few hundred words a day, and then on the weekends, really kind of amping it up where maybe I'm doing like definitely over 1,000 to just start building up that word count. But if I was tired during the week, then I'd be like, oh, actually, I'm just going to read through what I've written and edit it and then work on the outline for other chapters so that when it comes to the weekend, I can really just dive into writing new words. So, sort of like, I guess, writing on the weekend and then editing during the week.
Fantastic advice. How different is the book now from your first draft?
Oh God, I think it's completely different because the first one, even the title, when I first had the idea for it, I called it The Witch Hunter's Apprentice. And then I changed the title to Dark Rebels. And then before I queried my agent, I was like, oh, I'm just going to call it The Rebels. And luckily we kept it. And then some of the story, like the ending is still similar, but it's changed in that the Althemia, my character, has more agency in that. It's I think, yeah, she's going to be right there alongside the main character. And I've sort of drawn out the emotional aspect of the characters a lot more. So some things have changed, but I think a lot more with the help of my agent and editor. I've just drawn it out to sort of really get to the sort of draw out the motivations of everyone there.
Could you talk us through your journey to finding an agent, Stacey?
Yes. So basically, when I finished the book, I think God, I can't even remember, it was so long ago, but like it would have been September 2021. I think that's when I first started querying agents, and I had like a recommendation for the agency that my agent was at, Liza de Block. And so I emailed in, and then, she emailed back to request the full manuscript. And then she later emailed to ask for a meeting. And so at that time, a few agents were reading my book. But like, I remember when I went in, I just had a really kind of good feeling about her because obviously at that time I was part of some writing networks already. So, you hear good stories about agents, but then you also, just through my own experiences with my friends, you can see the horror stories where if your first book doesn't sell, they'll drop you. And it's that thing, and that sort of relationship will just crumble. And I just remembered with Liza, where she was just saying, if this book doesn't sell, then we'll work on the next one, and then the next one. And she said, and if it's the 10th book, then maybe it's that thing, we'd have to have a conversation. But I just felt like this is someone who realizes with the industry it's hard. And so it's that thing, you're going to need someone who's patient and believes in your writing and not just like just this one idea that they'll sell. And if the other stuff doesn't, then they don't want to have anything to do with you. So I felt that trust with her. And then I think I remember asking her what she was looking for in an author, and she just said, someone who's kind. And I thought, yeah, we need more kindness in this world and more honesty. So I just felt with her, this is someone who I could just be, who's going to be very candid, and she's going to do what she can to help me and like, my career along. And so I just remember leaving when I, after the meeting, just leaving, and I felt like, oh, well, I want to go back and just say I should sign with her. But then I was like, oh, that will be weird. So when I got home, I just messaged me like, yeah, I want to sign with you. And yeah, I've not regretted it. So yeah, no, I was very like happy. That was one of the best days of my life. Yeah.
Oh, she strikes me as such a lovely person, Liza.
She is. And yeah, no, it was like, yeah, no, it was a really special moment. So yeah.
Oh, can I ask what questions did you have in that meeting? Did you prepare questions and
So basically, I think when you're going to meet an agent, it's always good to basically ask where they see your book in terms of what publishers they're thinking of, because that shows that they're thinking about the market, where they can place you. And especially for historical fiction as well, it's always a good idea to be like, okay, what publishers they're thinking of, because that shows that, if they're bringing you in for a meeting, they already have an idea of where they want to sell the book. And even when during the meeting she was talking about the other authors they represented, so I knew that this is a strong agency for historical fiction. So they're going to have those contacts to give my book the best chance of being published and, being published well. And then when she was also talking about the foreign rights for the books and how they have a really, because she was at the time Liza was a foreign rights executive, so I know it's, I think she doesn't just want to sell UK and Commonwealth rights, but she wants to sell the book to different countries. And so I can see she really had that 360 approach to the book, which just showed she was thinking very strategically about it. And so that during the meeting, like when we were having when we was having that talk, I just felt like she had a really kind of strategic and kind of good idea of, who she wanted to send the book to and how she saw it, like, hopefully being published as well.
Stacey, can you talk us through what it's like to be edited by a publishing house?
Yes. So my editor for the Rebels was Katie Siemens, and the imprint was HQ at HarperCollins. And so, with the editing process, it was so funny because I remember like when my editor she first sent me like her editing notes. So she went through the draft and then also sent me like a separate like document with everything she had been picking out. And I remember when I first saw it, and I was like, oh, this will be a piece of cake. But then it's that thing. But then when I'm reading it again, I was like, oh my god, this is going to be such hard work because it's that thing. If you change something in the middle of the book, it has a ripple effect, not only for the rest of the book, but then it's that thing. You also need to go back and just make sure that everything's sort of leading up very carefully. And she really kind of dove into the manuscript, and so I could tell, you really like the book and you've read it so carefully, and you've been able to see things that I just completely missed. And that's one of the joys of getting the editing letter back. But then it's also like, oh my god, it's going to be like so much work, and sometimes you feel, am I actually up for it? Because it can feel so intensive and exhausting at times. And I remember when I was speaking to Katie, and she just said she always feels nervous sending out the editing letters because you don't know how people are going to take it. And it's that thing, it's like it was a situation where we both felt nervous. Me, because I was like, oh, I hope I can live up to your expectations, and her, like, because she's hoping that, I'll take it well and be happy with it. But it was a really good process because with her, it's she wanted to, like, I think with me, I think what I learned was it's that thing, because like I remember like she was making some suggestions, and I think even with my agent, I think my agent, like, she was suggesting perhaps setting the book during Halloween. And because like with my book, like some parts of the title were court trial, I actually can't change the date because they they had the court trials during a specific time of the year. So I was like, oh, I can't change it. And so when you're going through edits, it's having the confidence to listen to other people's advice and to action it, but then also having the confidence in your story and learning what advice you want to keep and what advice you want to discard. And so the whole process of going through edits was, you were really starting to fine tune that, and like learning how to listen and what to drop, and your self editing skills hopefully gets a bit better as well in terms of drawing out what you need. So it was
Yeah.
a good process. Yeah.
I interviewed R.J. Roberts, editor at Tor, senior commission editor at Tor Bramble,
Oh,
and I love the way she spoke about how it's the writer's story, and she has great faith if she suggests something, but it doesn't fit with the writer. And I'd never thought about it like that before. What is there, like a percentage split of how many edits you took on board and changed, and what percentage of things did you decide not to take on board?
um, in terms of the edits, it wasn't like a major structural overview. It was like, I think when Katie sent me the edits back, what she said was she wanted to draw a lot of more stuff out. So in terms of the emotional connections between the characters and more of the motivation. So when I was editing, it was a case of going in deeper. And so with those edits, I was happy to get more on board, because sometimes when I'm writing, I'm quite restrained with the characters and the feelings. So I know that's a weakness for me, where it's a thing I need to kind of dive in a bit to have that sort of emotional resonance kind of going through. And so there wasn't, like, I think in terms of the edits, like, she suggested some things, and it's like, oh, I understand what you mean, but like, I don't actually think that's right for the story. But then it was coming up with something different that kind of could sort of satisfy us both. And I remember when I first had a meeting with the editor when she was pitching for my book, and it was just interesting because the question she was asking was not only how we would work together, but it was sort of clear to me that she doesn't want she didn't want an author who, when she's making suggestions, that the author's just going to be like, yep, I'm going to do this and that. It's like, it's having this sort of dialogue where if she's making suggestions but I don't think it fits the story, then I'll come up with something better to fit with it. And so I think it's just sort of seeing the editing process as a conversation rather than, you know, your editor is telling you that you have to do this and that. I think it's like, no, it's like we can work together to come up with something. And I sometimes feel like with editing, it is like, you know, it's suggestions and advice on how to make the story stronger, but then it's also a question. It's like, I am suggesting this because this isn't working. Maybe you should follow this, or like maybe you can come up with something different that, you know, will kind of like resolve the questions that I have over this section.
So a real collaborative approach.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. What advice do you have for writers on this process? If you could go back to yourself in 2021, what would you say to yourself to prepare yourself for the journey ahead?
I feel like for the journey ahead, I'd probably tell myself just to be like patient, because when I look back, it feels like it happened so fast, like it was like a roller coaster ride. But then actually everything happens very like quite slowly because it takes time, or my time, it takes, you know, ages to write a book, although I'm probably more leaning into my second book. But the whole process is a long time, from writing the book to getting an agent to getting a publishing deal, and then even when you get a publishing deal, it could be a year or a year and a half or even two until your book is published. And so the whole process is a long time. So I think it's about being patient and, you know, working on your book, but then also just being strategic as to what else you're doing. And like, it's like, you know, trying to learn as much as possible, but not putting too much pressure on yourself because one person can't sort of move the needle. So it's about working, like being collaborative and working with other people, but then also realizing that, you know, the saying is true that publishing is slow. So you'll just
Yeah.
exhaust yourself sometimes trying to speed it up.
Before publication, I saw that you were one of the winners of the Killing It competition from
Yes.
HarperCollins. Can you tell us about your experience with competitions and how and why you use them? And I also saw in your comments at the end that you also mentioned Elaine and Sarah, the lovely ladies from I Am in Print. And I just
Yes,
wondered
yes.
if you could give us more information around the kind of things you did before you were published.
When I was writing The Rebels, I'll start with Elaine and Sarah because they're both so lovely. But I wanted to get, they run with the I Am in Print. They have agents like one to one. So this is where agents can read your opening chapters and provide you with feedback. And so I used their services on two occasions. And so it was just really useful to kind of get feedback from professional agents on what was working for them and what wasn't. And so I think for me, like, it's that thing, and again, it's you know, unvarnished feedback, because sometimes when you're having your friends read it, you know, they'll give you feedback, but like, no one really wants to hurt your feelings. So sometimes no one's really going to say, actually, this isn't working for me and this is why. And so those services were, it was just really useful because I could see what wasn't working and what wasn't. And so I'll always be very grateful for their services. And then with the HarperCollins Killing It competition, the only reason I entered that was because my sister said, you should enter this, because I feel like for me, I'm one of those people when it comes to competitions, I never feel like I'm going to win, so I don't enter it. And I remember entering it and I just being so surprised when Phoebe Morgan, the editor, emailed me to say, you're one of the three winners. Could you, if you send us the full manuscript in 5 days, we'll provide you with feedback. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But at that time, I only had 30,000 words. So I had 5 days to finish the novel. Yes.
Oh no,
And
Stacey!
I wrote an additional 30,000 words in 5 days. Yes, and I felt like a vampire at the end. And I've never repeated that experience because I felt I was so exhausted. I just felt terrible. Like, I feel like if I don't, it's that thing, it's like, I just, oh God, it was just, I was terrible at the end. And took me weeks to recover, but the feedback she sent me was so amazing. And we had 3 mentoring sessions as well. And so that was just useful because I can get feedback on my story, but then also Phoebe gave me some wonderful advice on the publishing industry and how it all worked, and especially how you would work with editors. And so I'm so glad that I entered it as well.
Wow, what a lovely story.
Yeah, but
Fantastic.
like yeah.
Stressful. I feel a bit stressed for you imagining
I
that
know.
situation.
It's like it was wonderful, but then it was that thing, it was that moment where I was like, I'm smiling, and then I was like, oh God, I'm gonna have to finish it, and yeah, no, I just still look back. I feel ill just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for writers wanting to improve their craft, what are your top tips for them?
When I was writing the revels, and especially when I was self-editing, I found it quite helpful to read it aloud and record myself reading it and then listen to it, because then I could point out things where it wasn't really working and kind of get a sense of the rhythm as well. And so I always find that quite helpful. And then I feel like I remember because I was mentored by the author Claire McIntosh, and she's so lovely, and just the advice she gave me, I'm still benefiting from it now. But I remember she recommended a craft book called Seven Drafts by Alison K. Williams. And it's basically a book on how to kind of self edit your manuscript once you finish your first draft. And so that was just quite helpful as well in terms of developing your craft. So many people say it, but reading other people's stories will definitely help you to develop it, because it's a thing. I think with me, you can pick out so many stuff in other people's work that isn't working, and then sometimes when you come to yourself, there are these blind spots, and I could, because with one of my friends, when you're beta reading the books, and it's like they're brilliant, but then you can point out, you can easily see what stuff isn't working. And every time you're reading and editing, like whether you're beta reading or you're reading for pleasure, no matter how much you love a book, you can always point out, even though that worked for the story, it's like, it's always good to be like, oh, that worked, but I wouldn't have done it like that. And then you can hone in into what makes into your differences as a writer, and what aspects of storytelling works for you and what doesn't, even if it can work for other people. And so when you're reading other people's like work, you're learning from them, but then you're also honing in on like what makes you different, hopefully.
In terms of when you were writing the Revels and your own book, has anything changed about your writing process?
Oh God, I feel like it's changed because it's that thing, like when your like first book is published, it's a dream come true. It's also that thing, but then you also realize like this is a career, it's an industry. It is like a roller coaster, so there's ups and there's downs. You really want everything all at once. And now I realize, well, sometimes it's that thing, it doesn't matter how fast you are, like things still take time. And I feel like now it's like I'm a lot more intentional when I'm starting a story, or when I'm researching. I'm a lot more intentional with what I want to do. But then I've changed as a person and also as a writer. And I remember reading an author where she was talking about her first book. And since then, she'd written different books, but she was just saying, with her first book, she couldn't write that way anymore because she's just a different person. And I kind of feel like, because I wrote The Rebels in 2021, so it's been 4 years, and yeah, I'm a different person. So with that kind of voice, like, I'm happy I wrote it and stuff, but I'm in a completely different mindset. Like how I approach stuff, it's completely kind of different. So not just in terms of the writing, but the actual voice. And I think before, when I started working on book 2 after the Rebels had been published, it's quite scary because sometimes you feel like you have to deliver more of the same. And actually now it's like, it's sort of just that thing. You can't beat time. So if things are going to take time, then you need to change, and you need to not be afraid to do something different. And now when I read authors' books, and you just realise, yeah, their first book, it's different in tone and style from the second, and you're actually like, oh, this is actually really quite refreshing to see, because you're doing something different.
It takes bravery, doesn't it, to do something different and to stay true to yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
And I can't wait to read book 2, Stacey. I'm so excited, and we will make sure everyone at Ascent Level Prize knows about your pre-launch when it's coming out.
Oh, thank
So
you.
finally, what would be your advice to those writers out there who feel like the barriers to enter in the industry are too high, or perhaps they don't see themselves reflected in the industry? What advice do you have to people trying to break in?
I feel like my advice, and it's something that's always said, and so sometimes it can feel, a bit empty, but like I think my key advice is just to keep going, because I feel like if you allow things to just stop you, then it's that thing, then it's always going to be true. Like, you can't change something if you just stop. By writing and trying to get your work out there, you're actively changing things because you're showing people that actually there are writers, who exist, who are writing stuff to bring more diversity or different points of views. And so you have to keep going. If you're facing rejection or you feel like the barriers are too high, it's a case of being kind to yourself, and it's just that thing, doing what you can. But then I think also just recognizing that you have the power, whether it's to say yes or whether it's to say no. And with publishing, I feel like sometimes people, they can get really burnt out because it's just the idea, it's a dream come true, and so you feel like you have to say yes to everything. But actually sometimes there's a lot of exploitation that comes into it, and at the end of the day, like, you're just one person, and like the reason people want to read your stories is because you're the only one who can write that story. So you have to protect your time, and you have to protect your time and your space. And in terms of like, if you're facing rejection or you feel like the barriers are too high, you need to sort of look for organizations that are there to amplify people's voices. And because there are plenty of organizations that are trying to make a difference, like I Am in Print and also the Ascent Novel Prize. And so I think it's a case of amplifying what those organizations are doing, because sometimes there's all this negative information that can make people, and it's that thing, it's like, just because it's negative it doesn't mean it's not true. But sometimes it's that kind of human trait to kind of focus on the negative. Well, actually there is like a lot of positive stuff, but it's that thing, it's not as clickbaity. And so I think we need to focus on what people are doing to change stuff, because a lot of the time you have people who actively do want to change stuff, but they need more support in doing that.
Stacey,
So
that's a
yeah.
fantastic note to end on. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been wonderful speaking to you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.